So welcome to Agon 1, the revolution. This is the press conference. We're here to announce the main event. Ben Askren is here. Mike DeSabato is a consultant to the group, president of CF Athletic and presenting sponsor of Agon 1. Dan Cormier, Uriah Faber are here representing MMA and wrestling. And I'd like to introduce Mike DeSabato right now.
First of all, thank you, Mike. I made one call when Agon, the folks behind Agon, Ernie Siasco, who you're meeting in a minute, and Wayne Boyd, and myself over the last 4 to 6 weeks have been literally 3 o'clock in the morning talking about this concept and how to get it going. The first media guy that I called or texted regarding the concept was Mike Straka, because Mike and I, about a year ago, got in a little Twitter war, a little bit. I kind of popped him a little bit like, dude, you don't know what wrestling's all about. And he said, no, I do. And I said, well, yeah, you kind of do. So, Mike, I appreciate you being here. Today is a historic day. Today is the day that wrestling says that we understand. We understand that, first of all, we have the world's first and oldest and greatest sport. It's the first sport. And earlier this year, the IOC gave us a wake-up call. And I know these guys, I've talked to each of them, they'll each spend a couple minutes just describing their feelings, but I know this. Mid-February, when the IOC told me and you that wrestling was going to be eliminated from the Olympic Games, it wasn't a good day emotionally, because what they said to us, in my opinion, was, unless you change your way, we're going to put you on the brink of extinction. Now, I grew up in a large Italian Catholic family in Ohio, and there were 6 boys and 3 girls. And without wrestling, I would not be here today. I would not have gone to 2 Olympic Games as a commentator. I would not have started a company in 2007 called MMA Authentics. I would not have had the opportunities that I've had in life because I've had the experience to be a wrestler. And Agon Wrestling Championships, the concept is this. We are going to put our athletes, the world's greatest athletes, the world's first athletes, on display in a professional platform to allow them to make a fair wage in their craft, a craft that is already proven to be the #1 discipline and the #1 craft in mixed martial arts. And if we can learn anything from the UFC and Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta and all the pioneers of mixed martial arts, the Mark Colemans, the Randy Coutures, the Chuck Liddells, the Tito Ortiz, we have stars in our sport. And we have allowed our own complacency to not give those stars a platform. We have let corruption at the international level. We have let complacency at the domestic level rob us of our profits. I'm a big Bob Marley fan. And Bob Marley said in one of his most famous songs, Redemption Song, how long shall they steal our profits while we stand aside and look? Well, I'm done looking. And I think everyone in this room that's here today is done looking. We're done of I would have, I could have, I should have. And we're going to do. Because wrestlers, like no other athlete, understands what it means to embrace the grind. Now, there's the word, the grind. You tell me that it's okay for the IOC to say that we are going to eliminate the grind. We are going to stop teaching our children about the grind. That's unacceptable. And I challenge every wrestler that's ever put on a pair of shoes and a beautiful singlet. And yes, the singlet is a beautiful thing, because no other athlete has the balls to put on a singlet and stand in the middle of a mat looking like the most beautiful warrior that's ever been on God's green earth. There's a reason we wear a singlet, because we can. There's a reason we wear a singlet, because we train harder than anyone in sport. And there's a reason we wear a singlet, because when you see a wrestler at the professional level, men and women will look at that athlete and say, wow, look at that dude. So, again, today is a historic day, and I want to thank these three athletes. Uriah Faber, I'll speak to Uriah 1 minute. When I got into business in 2007 and started MMA Authentics, one of the first athletes I worked with was Uriah Faber. Uriah was, he believed early on that a company that was invested in wrestling could make it. And this man, this little dude over here, this little jackhammer, has shown us as wrestlers that you can build a brand and a business by being professional, by being an unbelievable athlete, and by carrying yourself in a very, very positive manner. And Uriah was one of the first guys to say, I believe in Mike DeSabato. So for him to be here today, for me, is a special thing.
Thanks, Mike.
Right, let's take over.
Hey guys, and you know, Mike called, and if you know Mike, he's all about wrestling. He's got a long history in the sport, not only in business, but as a supporter of young athletes. And so anything to support the growth of our sport, the ability to save Olympic wrestling, which is the hope for these young guys that are starting at such a young age, you know, doing things that most adults wouldn't put themselves through if they were paid to do, is something that needs to be recognized. And the goal for these athletes is to be a world champion, an Olympic champion. To take that away is just, it's heartbreaking and it's strange, you know. So anything that I can do to help support the sport that helped change my life, you know, I'm going to do that. You know, I think the concept of holding some of our stars on a pedestal and having them compete, guys that have made their names in the sport over years and years of just being incredible athletes is pretty cool. I remember I had a couple of tapes in high school. My high school coach got me. It was an all-star duel, and it was a duel for two of the top schools, Iowa and I think Oklahoma. And I watched those Oklahoma State, and I watched them over and over and over again. And guys like Kerry Colat and Steve Bono and Mike Ironside, these are guys that I looked up to, I learned from, and those were superstars in my eyes. So having a platform where we can watch these guys, these future stars in whatever sports they do, guys like Lance Palmer and a guy like Ben Askren, you know, these guys compete at the highest level is pretty awesome. So I'm going to be there to watch and support the sport that has helped shape me and the sport that I love and has been so good in my life. Ben?
I'm up.
You're on.
General statement.
General statement.
You know, I agree with a lot of things Mike said, and obviously Uriah made the point. And you know, I think almost any wrestler is just a high level victim. I don't know where I'd be without wrestling. Right? It shaped me from such a young age. It built me into the man I am. You know, it's almost like trying to think about what you would have been if you never got into it. It's a really strange feeling. So yeah, I want to echo that sentiment by them that wrestling is something a lot of young men need, and it gets them on the straight and narrow, and it teaches them lessons about life, and not only to be successful in athletics, but to be successful in a lot of other ventures in life. And then this sentiment Mike said about, you know, the Olympics the IOC trying to take it away from us is, you know, IOC took away baseball in 2004, and did the MLB, you know, did Major League Baseball go away? No, it didn't go away. And you know, this is what wrestling needs. Wrestling has been too blue collar for too long. And you know, it's about time we get our act together and we have a professional event. And just the way these guys are doing things, I love it. You know, I know Real Pro Wrestling spent a lot of money trying to get on TV back in 2005. It didn't work. You got to spend so much money up front to get it. We have a great platform in Flow Wrestling, who everyone in wrestling knows what Flow Wrestling is, okay? They already have a pay-per-view service. They've done this 20 times. It's going to run smooth. It's not like we're going to have to go into the first event and wonder, is this going to work? We already know it works. We've seen it work. I watched plenty of events on Flow Wrestling last year. So, and then on top of that, they're putting it at the New Wave Freak Show where there's going to be 2,500 kids there. So, you know, there's already going to be close to 10,000 people in the building when you include parents and siblings. So, these guys are smart. They're doing it the right way, and I think it's about time wrestling creates a professional venue and stops trying to suckle on the teat of, you know, the NCAA and the IOC. You know, when they do stuff like take cuts down 6 weight classes, I'm going to go kick someone in their head and say, get the hell out of here. We need 12 weight classes, damn it. Daniel needs to stop cutting to 211, you know, make it 220 for him. And, you know, he might wrestle a few more years. So we as a sport need to start fighting back. And the only way we can fight back is if we give ourselves value. Right now, what do we have? What do we have for a bargaining chip? We don't have anything. Right now, you know, the IOC begs. They beg Major League Baseball to let them have some of their stars. They beg the NHL to let them have some of their stars for the Olympics. You know, they don't have to beg wrestling. Where else are wrestlers going to go? Daniel, I would guess he said when I was 14, I decided I wanted to be in the Olympics. That was my sole goal for 10 years, right? And, you know, I was one of those lucky ones who made it to my goal, but there was no other choices. When I got out of college, it was like, do I train for the Olympics, or do I train for the Olympics, or do I coach wrestling? And that was it, you know. And now MMA became a venue where we can make money with the skills we've built over years. But now, if Agon can work, and I really think it can, because I think these guys are smart, I think they're doing the right things. That'll be another venue for wrestlers who have worked hard their whole lives to make a living doing something they love and they're passionate about, and show their skills to the world. And it's going to give the kids, the youth of our generation, you know, the kids that are growing up right now, and I have 2 wrestling academies, so I know how they think. When they said the wrestling cup in the Olympics, every single kid in my academy came up to me and said, what are we going to do? And, you know, how do I answer that? They're 10 years old. It's a very hard answer. So, you know, that's something the 10 and 11-year-olds, they're going to say right now, when they go to Freak Show and they see Agon 1, they're going to say, when I get older, I want to wrestle in Agon. That's what all 10, 11, and 12-year-olds are going to say. So, I've been waiting for something like this to happen for a long time. I know Martin Floriani and I had talks about this stuff in 2007 and 8, and you know, obviously there was no infrastructure for us to put it together, but the infrastructure's there. There's a lot of smart people behind this, and it's about time wrestling does something for itself.
Amen.
Well, you know, it's the same thing for me. You know, you don't take away a person's dream. You don't take these kids. They all aspire to be Olympians, especially the ones that are in our clubs that have seen that we have done it. With that being said, you know, as a community, the wrestling community fought whenever we heard the news. You know, from the biggest stars in MMA like Uriah and to every person that has ever been tied to wrestling, the media, wrestling fans, everybody fought. And, you know, we're all kind of heading in the right direction. So even if this becomes a scare, you know, even if wrestling does get reinstated next few days, I think it's 8 days now to the vote. If it gets reinstated, this was a huge wake-up call for the sport. Because now we have to understand that we cannot just stay in our lane, not really ruffle any feathers or mess with anything and expect to just survive always. You have to make changes. You have to change with the times, and I think this is the first step in it. You know, it's something different, something new, something fresh, and these guys are doing a great job of putting it together. For all that I've seen, we're gonna jump behind wrestling anytime we can. You know, regardless of your obligations or whatever you have to do, we're gonna jump behind wrestling, and that's why we're here today, and we're hoping that this thing takes off and. You know, we continue to have the sport that's molded us all into the champions that we are. So it's a great day for wrestling, and I hope to see these types of events continue as we press forward, because we have to raise, not only did we raise awareness for our sport, now that people know, you know, people that would have never had heard about wrestling, when they heard wrestling was getting out of the Olympics, it's like, what? Wrestling is the Olympics. How could it ever be out of the Olympics? And when they heard that, people started to pay attention. So now that we have their eye, let's keep it. Let's not let them go back to it's wrestling. You know, it's guys in singlets, right? let's keep their eye with Agon and we're going to move forward. We're going to continue to keep building this sport. That's the most important thing, and that's why I'm here. So.
I have questions for Mike actually, but can you? I apologize, I missed it in previous press materials or something. But can you talk about just the name of the organization, what it means, where it came from?
Well, that's a good question because before I got in this, before the start, it actually came from a good friend who's a Latin teacher. When we thought of the idea, Ernie and I were on the phone and we think of the names, and Agon means conflict or Olympic contest. Now, again, I want to echo what was said earlier, that regardless of what the Olympics and the IFC does, our sport will survive because I'm not a loser. And the things that I bet on winners, and these three guys are winners. And we're going to stand up. And these guys are just three representatives of a whole community of fighters. When we know there's a fight, and that's what I don't think wrestlers have understood. This is a fight. This is a fight. We've sat back and allowed incompetence at the Olympic level, at the IFC level, at the FILA level, run our sport. These guys are all fighting. I mean, they all experience it. They've all got stories. I've listened to them for the last 5 years. And again, the best thing that ever happened to our sport was that wake-up call. Because again, regardless of whatever they do, Agon, the conflict, will continue.
And obviously today we've got 3 representatives from MMA, and it seems like the MMA community has been really strong. But going forward, do you see a lot of integration with MMA? Is it completely separate? I mean, how do you envision that?
We love MMA. MMA may be, and the folks that started the UFC, and guys like Mark Coleman and Randy Couture, they saved our sport. They saved our sport. For the first time, in my opinion, for the first time in the history of our sport, and since I've been born, wrestling was cool. It wasn't just these guys sitting down the hallway that worked harder than anyone. We've let communities outside our community take our concepts and make billions of dollars off them. Let's talk from a business standpoint. What is CrossFit? It's another name for wrestling practice. And we wrestling have let that concept be marketed and packaged by a community that's not us. Reebok is behind that brand. Reebok is not us. They're a chick brand. Are we chicks? No. These guys are not chicks. They're the hardest, hardcore athletes in the history of the world. And it's about time that we start telling people that. Luke Fickle was a good friend of mine, the assistant coach at Ohio State, was a great wrestler in high school, and came out for I use Luke all the time because he played both sports at a very high level. And if you ask Luke Fickle today, which sport was harder? Football, the most violent, evil sport in the world. Oh, by the way, I love it, but it's the most violent. And if you asked him, which would you prefer to do? The most violent, that you could lose your head, or wrestling? Which one's harder? It's not even close, wrestling. So how have we let our sport get to the point where our stories aren't being told in a manner that it should be told? It's unacceptable.
I mean, there have been similar ventures in the past, as you guys mentioned, Real Pro Wrestling. What do you think the difference is? I mean, why did it not work then? Why can't it work now? What's the key difference?
Well, I think there's several things. Number one, MMA has shown us the way how to present the show. And again, I don't want to be critical of the folks that put on that venture because they loved wrestling. But again, I think what we've got to do with Agon is this is more about the show than it is about anything. We need to present ourselves in a manner that you're used to with the UFC, with Strikeforce, meaning USA Today, Bleacher Report, Time Magazine. We need to act like we know how to do business. This is business. Wrestling is a business. Ben Askren has shown that he can make money in the wrestling business. He said he's invested in this community. He's going to have 5 academies by the end of what, Ben?
2014.
He's not a mixed martial artist. He's a wrestler. Plain and simple. And he's not afraid of it. He's not ashamed of it. And he's going to be the kind of guy that we build our brand around. Because he's a star. I mean, he's not as good looking as me. But he does have some attributes that that are appealing to most folks.
I know you mentioned the singlet with pride, but does the singlet stay? Or
It stays. It stays. It's stubborn. I'm stubborn. Guess what? There's good margins in singlets too. Let's be honest. But at the end of the day, the singlet is the display. That's how you know you're a wrestler. I mean, I put on a singlet. My wife loves me in a singlet.
All right, give me the mic. Wife loves her.
It seems like there's a huge amount of passion for wrestling amongst guys like you that have been doing it your entire life, but how do you spread that to a general fan base and make sure that the casual fan, maybe that watches MMA on a regular basis, becomes as interested and as passionate about this as you guys are?
I think that answer is twofold. Number one, I saw the rules that they're coming out with for Agon 1, and I love them. They're the most simplistic set of rules that I've seen for wrestling in a long time. They make perfect sense. And, when we're talking about like FILA, drop our weight classes. I mean, Dan, how many times did FILA change the rules when you were wrestling?
They changed quite a bit, actually.
It was
Almost
like
after every Olympic Games, they would change something.
Yeah, it's just crazy. They just change rules, and it's like a common fan, someone walks down the street, when the rules change every week. I went to some tournaments this spring where I was coaching my kids. That's my profession, coaching the kids. And they changed the rule during the week that I didn't even know, and they called something, I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And they changed, that's my job is to know the rules, and they change them so often. I don't know them, it's crazy. So it's a very simplistic set of rules that a common fan is gonna understand. Secondly, like Mike's been talking about, wrestling's been blue collar for too long. We don't know how to sell ourselves. And this is a challenge Max and I encountered when we started our wrestling academies is, a Taekwondo school, they open up, Anthony Pettis owns a Taekwondo school. He's got to get Joe Schmo off the street into his Taekwondo school because you know what? There's not Taekwondo at the middle school. There's not Taekwondo at the high school. So he's got to get a brand new person who's never done Taekwondo before to jump into Taekwondo. Wrestling has been, kind of been passive in that aspect because they've been in middle schools and high schools, and there's been very, very few for-profit academies, clubs, whatever, until very recently. And we still are having trouble figuring out because there's no blueprint. No one's done it before. How do we market to a kid who's never wrestled before? How do we get them to decide we want to do wrestling? And I think we instill a lot of the concepts for from the Taekwondo and karate schools. They they emphasize the discipline, the respect, the responsibility. Dude, wrestling teaches those values 20 times better than karate does. Let's be real about it, okay? And they go to karate schools to learn those values. Wrestlers have to show that we can teach those values because that's really what's important. I mean, it's cool you win a wrestling match, but if you grow up and you have good values, that's more important than anything. Wrestling teaches those values better than anything that a kid can do. And wrestling people got to be able to put that out there and sell that to people.
I've always given you credit as being one of the best marketing minds as a fighter in the sport. Do you think that this has the potential to be wildly successful on a television network, for example?
To be honest with you, I haven't done too much research, and I know what my passions are, and I know what I stand for, and when Mike said that we're doing something to save wrestling and to create opportunities for wrestlers, I said, yeah, I'll come be a part, come talk about it and come support. I've got one of my up-and-coming guys on my team who is actually going to participate in this up-and-coming, first monumental event. So I'm here to support the sport that I love. I feel like as far as marketing goes, you can't teach cool. So we got to find guys in the sport that are cool and are good at what they do, and you spread their personalities and who they are to the people. And you're going to have people that you don't like, the villains, and there's going to be people that you love. I mean, that's something that people get to choose on their own, and there's some instinctual things that make people make those decisions. So you need to find the stars, and you blow them up. And so that's what Mike's talking about. And I really am kind of ignorant to the whole process here. I stepped in today because one of my brothers in the wrestling world asked me to, and I know that he's got the sport's best interest in mind, and so I stepped up today to be here and to talk about it. But it's about bringing our sport to the masses and telling them, hey, this sport is a sport that is not only the most impressive sport in the world, but a sport that changes people's lives, but a sport that really cool, influential, and powerful people do. And that's kind of, we've been kind of kicked around when it comes to colleges cutting sports and things like that. Wrestling's the first to go because we don't have rich, influential parents. We don't have a professional avenue to jump into up until now with mixed martial arts. So, the sport's going to change, and this goal for wrestlers to have a place to go to is great in my mind. And I'm honestly really new to the whole concept, other than that Mike hit me up on a phone call when I was traveling. Was like, we're going to have wrestling matches. We're going to take these guys and do the super matches that people wanted to see, and you got to get in one. And I'm like, well, I'd fight for the UFC. But I got a bunch of young guys that are better wrestlers than I am that would love that, and I'm all for supporting it.
Let me speak to the TV question, because that's an important question. The NCAA championships last year grew by 55% viewership from over 600,000. I think they have over 600,000 households in America that tune in on a Saturday night. And for the first time, we actually in wrestling made a good decision. We took a super match, Kyle Dake versus David Taylor, and moved it to the end of the telecast. And we actually promoted it a little bit. Now, we relied on a bunch of bureaucrats from the NCAA to promote it. And what happens when you rely on bureaucrats to promote? They do an okay job, okay? And they did an okay job. And they still reached 850,000 American sports fans. And everyone knows Kyle Dake. A lot of people know Kyle Dake, even if they've never seen wrestling, because he was on SportsCenter that night. Now, Kyle Dake, unless we do something, will not wrestle on American soil on TV, ever. Jordan Burroughs, the Olympic champion, one of the most gifted, beautiful athletes the world's ever seen, has not competed on American soil on TV. He did once this year on NBC Sports. The reality is we've not presented those networks with a platform that they can actually that they can invest in. Now, if you look at the proliferation of sports networks, Fox Sports 1, Fox Sports 2, ESPN, you name it. If we can't get on one of those networks in the next 12 months, then I'm just not doing my job. Ernie's not doing his job. Agon's not doing its job, because we have stars. And our sport sells on TV. It's proven. The Big Ten Network is another case in point. Big Ten Network's third most popular sport on their network is wrestling. It's not hockey, it's not baseball, it's not gymnastics, it's wrestling. So there's a sports fan. A lot of us, even if you talk about the NFL, how many NFL guys are former wrestlers? We've let our best guy, Stephen Neal, leave wrestling to go play a sport that he's very good at as well. But he was a world champion wrestler that didn't have a venue to put his amazing talent on display. Networks will buy this. It just has to be presented in a way that Uriah Faber just said. If we're not cool, if we're not promoting guys that understand how to promote our sport and sell a fight, because it is a fight. This is a fight. It's not, wrestling match is a fight with rules. So we need to promote. We need Ben Askren's. The guys that stir up the pot. That he'll call out anybody on earth. And I'm telling you right now, the first guy we called when we wanted, and we knew that we were going to do this, was Ben Askren. And he said, I'm in. And I'll take on anyone. Dave, Burroughs. He wants them all. Well, our community is like, oh my God, did he actually say he could beat Jordan Burroughs? Oh my God. Well, yeah. I think I could beat Jordan Burroughs today. I'm standing on stage. The reality is, we've got to, even if it's crazy, look, he's looking at me crazy. Damn, at least someone said it.
MD, I beat you.
I
beat you in Philadelphia.
Listen,
You were
dude,
switching
I
your
was
stance
retired.
back and forth. MD, you were switching lead legs back and forth in Philadelphia. That's what kids do, MD. You can't beat Jordan Burroughs.
I got
You can't beat Jordan Burroughs in the wrestling
Hey,
match.
Mike, since you're on the subject of Ben calling out anybody, can you talk about the main event?
Yes.
I got it.
He wants me to talk about
I'm gonna cradle Mike up. I got a bet with Mike that I'm gonna cradle him in less than a minute. He's done.
No.
I told him to start taking some yoga, so I'm rolling him up.
Speak about the main
Okay,
event.
initially we were looking at Kyle Dake.
Now wait a minute.
We were talking to Kyle Dake. I can't say why he didn't sign the contract. All I know is he didn't. Okay? Would I have loved to wrestle Kyle Dake? Yes, he's one of the 2 or 3 best American folk style wrestlers ever. I want a piece of that. Okay? I don't know why he didn't sign the contract. Could be lots of reasons. Maybe he's scared. I don't know. I guess we'll find out soon enough, right? So, you know, at that point, I told these guys, whatever. I don't give a shit. Find me someone to wrestle. We get to wrestle for money. I wrestled Jake Herbert for free a couple years back. You know what? Because I like wrestling. Okay? And I said, I don't care. So, Quentin Wright, 197-pound national champ. I think we're wrestling at 195, which I don't even weigh 195. But, you know, I said, whatever. I said, find me someone, bring it on, let's go. So they found me a young guy who's a stud. He's 2-time national champ. He wrestles a wild style just like me, so it's going to be a fun match. And, you know, I'll probably put him on his back and the ref will go, bam. It'll be over. First Agon main event ever by pin.
By pin?
Well, duh.
Mike, how do you hang on to your stars? You're talking about growing these guys and then making sure that they have opportunity within wrestling, but how do you make sure that they don't get snatched up by some other organization that's not going to allow them to compete for you anymore?
We want to provide a feeder to MMA. I mean, Uriah mentioned Lance Palmer, 4-time NCAA champion. He's going to fight. He's brilliant at it. But the reality is, as he's becoming, you know, the next Uriah Faber, to have an avenue or a venue for him to put on his skills against guys that may not be mixed martial arts stars. You know, we're looking at potentially Jordan Oliver to match up with Lance. So the reality is, wrestling fans want to see those matches. And like Metamoris, I mean, Metamoris showed us a lot. You know, the mixture of mixed martial arts athletes, you know, it gives Danny Cormier's and Ben Askren's and Uriah Faber's another avenue to display their amazing skill, and in a sport that's not as brutal. And again, they're in training with this stuff every, you know, we're not asking them to do something they're not already doing. So we think, you know, again, our goal is to work with MMA. They've shown us the way, and it's our goal to build stars. Again, Ben just happens to be in a nice situation now, given his contracts, his contract status with Bellator and the UFC. Again, we'll work with Ben Askren whether he's competing in our events or not, because he understands the beauty of our sport.
If I do sign with the UFC or Bellator, it will be written in that I can compete in Agon.
You can tell me.
Yeah, I had it written into my last contract with Bellator that if I felt the need to wrestle, I would give the wrestle, and they said okay. And you guys got to go.
Yeah, but so all right. Can we go back?
I don't know when can they go.
We're going to close it.
Wait,
So-
I got to finish the answer. I asked them to leave.
You were in the middle?
I was in the middle.
Okay, so finish and then we'll let them know.
Okay, thanks.
Please.
So, the UFC's been fairly lenient letting these other guys do the Metamoris events. I know, I think Nick Diaz and Ben Henderson did the BJJ Worlds or whatever. And, you know, it's like a 9-minute wrestling match. We do more than that every single day in practice. The chances we're going to get hurt or something like that are, you know, not none, but slim to none. You know, definitely. So, you know, I'd like to see Uriah whoop someone. I don't know about you guys. You know, I know he's still got some good moves in him. So hopefully we'll see him in an event. I really couldn't see Dana or Bjorn having a real issue with this. It's literally less than everyday practice.
Yeah, for me, if I was going to do any type of match, and I love wrestling, you know, for those who haven't wrestled in this world, it's like a cigarette smoker with nicotine. I mean, you need some sort of wrestling in your life to keep feeling normal. So, you know, I would just have to talk to, you know, my bosses and say, hey, can I do a wrestling match for this group? And I haven't. It hasn't even been an issue. I haven't even considered it. But I mean, I would love to do a match as long as they say it's okay. You know.
All right, guys, that wraps up the Agon 1 press conference, October 27th at the Rio. Ben Askren versus Quentin Wright main event. Thank you, Dan Cormier. Thank you, Uriah Faber. Ben Askren will be around for media questions afterwards as well for one-on-ones. Thanks very much for coming, guys.